It's really exciting to speak to you. I used to edit Kerrang magazine in the
Oh,
UK,
cool.
and for years we were like, "Oh, we need to get hold of Kat Von D. We need to do something with Kat Von D," and we couldn't get hold of you. And then now I do this podcast. Your PR
Uh-huh.
was like, "Hey, do you want to speak to Kat Von D?" And I was like, "Do I want to speak to Kat Von D?" But it feels like this has been a long time coming.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad we finally get to connect.
Yeah, totally. And also, at that point, I hadn't heard your music,
Yeah.
and you make really good music.
Oh, thank
It's very, it's very much in the vein of things I enjoy.
Oh,
I,
cool.
I was quite amazed to learn that before you did all the stuff that you do, you were making music as a kid. You were playing piano and stuff.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people know me for, tattooing and makeup and all that stuff, but they don't know that I actually was classically trained in piano since I was 5 years old. So music has always been my first and foremost, like, biggest form of self-expression that I love.
Was it? Would you say that that was what you always wanted to do, or was it just that? Because
Yeah,
I can.
yeah, it's true. It's always been the at the foreground of what I wanted to do. And then I feel like life gets in the way of life in a way. Like, when I started the makeup line, I had no idea that it was going to blow up so big. And it ended up just consuming my entire existence for over a decade. And I think, when I got closer to selling the makeup line is when a big part of that factor was like, I'm never going to be able to tour. I'm never going to be able to continue to produce music if I don't choose. And I think, like, we're living in this era, especially for women, where we tell each other like, oh, you can do anything and you should have everything. And I think that's a lie. I don't think that you can do everything well. I mean, I think you can juggle a lot of things and your attention kind of gets compartmentalized. But as far as, like, motherhood, like, career, what all these things that we're talking about, it's not, we don't live in a fantasy world where you can do everything. I think that the wiser approach would be, or I guess the more realistic approach would be, that we all have seasons, and I had my season where I was a workaholic and that's all that was driving me. And now I'm in a season where I want to do the things that I'm passionate about. I'm not passionate about lipstick.
Right, right.
I mean, I like doing my makeup, but that's not like, I that was never what I wanted to do. And so I'm like, okay, well, I better release this music that I've made already before I'm too old to sing it.
Well, that's really interesting to me. Firstly, because as a dude,
Uh-huh.
as a dude that uh, I guess my kind of beliefs as a dude is that the women in my life, like my wife, for example, like I always try to say, you can do anything you want, do all the things that you want to do,
Yeah.
soak it all up. But increasingly, she says to me, well, I'm at a point where I need to think about having children, and
Yeah.
so it's not something I would say, but it's interesting to hear a
Yeah. And
woman
it's I
say
don't
that.
think I don't think it's a bad thing. I feel like we just have this idea that like, you're told as a little kid, like, you can do anything. And I mean, I think that's, like, cute, but at the end of the day, I think I do feel that we are multifaceted. I don't agree with people who think you should stay in one lane. I think that's ridiculous. Like, where would Salvador Dali be if we all thought that way?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
Salvador Dali he was known for painting, but he wrote poetry books, he designed architecture, he did furniture, he even had a makeup line too. So I think we're capable of pursuing whatever outlet we desire, but I don't think that we have the ability to do things 100% in at once. Like, I don't believe in multitasking. I think you can delegate, and I think you can set apart time, but I don't think you can do two things at once.
I see that's interesting as well, though, because
I'm like
I
I'm like ruining everybody's dreams, but
no, no, no,
it's
no,
not
that's
a
not.
bad thing.
No, that's not how I see it at all.
Yeah,
I think I think the problem was that women were told for such a long time they could only do one thing, and
sure.
that was, that was reproduce. And then,
Yeah.
but I just think that there's that thing of, You know, I've got
Which that, that was a lie too. We can do more than that. I think I know that because I'm proof of that.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
and now that I am a mom, which I love, it's like I get to see the world through different eyes, and like we're fortunate enough to be able to like homeschool our kid, and he loves going on tour. He like loves tour buses. He loves traveling. He's a really good traveler. And so it's like, I can be a mom and tour and make music and stuff. I just don't think I can handle a giant corporate company and still be able to do the things that I actually love. And so after 12 years, I sold my makeup line, and it was like exciting to finally be able to do like to focus all my energy into what I really have dreamed of doing for so long. And that's the music thing. But and we were supposed to tour last year after the first album came out, but all the stuff in Ukraine was barely happening, and we were so just being cautious because we didn't really know, like what does this mean? What will it look like for going into certain territories? And so we just thought, we should play it safe. And so I ended up just saying, hey, you know what? Like, let's take this time to start writing a new album. And then so now we've written the second album, and you've heard Vampire Love, which is the first single, and so I'm excited to hopefully eventually be able to tour that and come out your way. We have so many fans and friends out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you are really coming to the. I mean, it's maybe a controversial statement, but I think you are coming to the home of that music, really.
Yeah, that's not controversial at all. I mean, all my favorite bands are from there.
Well, I guess that I'm a big punk rock guy, and
Yeah.
I regularly have arguments with my American friends about who invented punk rock, and they claim New York Dolls,
Oh, we did not.
Ramones.
No.
Well,
We contributed, I think, but come on.
yeah, I can't remember who it was, but I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about the New York Dolls, and they were saying, well, the New York Dolls weren't a punk band; they were like a glam band. But
Yeah.
without the New York Dolls, punk doesn't happen
Yeah.
here. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Before I get into the song and the music, the other thing that's interesting about what you're saying is that I've always sort of viewed you as just a bit of a Renaissance woman, really. I've often felt like, I'm 43 and I get frustrated all the time that I haven't done all the things I want to do. I've done loads. I've written, I've edited magazines, do podcasts, I wrote comics for a bit. I was in a band. I've really filled my life with the things I want
Yeah.
to do, and I get so frustrated where I'm like, the clock's ticking, and you haven't done this, you haven't done this. But it feels like you. Well, it just feels like you have done so much stuff, and the fact that you're basically saying now, "Whoa, hang on, I just want to do the stuff I want to do." That's interesting to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a good model, isn't it, though? I feel like work hard and work towards these goals, and eventually you'll get to do the things that you can eat your dessert, I guess. And it's not to say that the vegetables along the way aren't good either. It's I just feel like I said, it's just more seasonal for me. I think like my priorities have shifted. Like I'm happily married, and I love like spending time with my family and building that. And like that's a big part of how I divvy up my day, and how many hours go into this and that. Like before, when I was very single, I would get a song idea at like 3 a.m. and I would go downstairs and sit at my piano and be as loud and obnoxious. And now I literally schedule my workflow, which it actually works better for me. I'm a you know I need deadlines and I need structure. I thrive in that. And so I think before I feel like not that I got lucky, but I was fortunate enough to produce so much without any structure. Like it was just very wild and all over the place. So it's very chaotic. Whereas now it's like, for this last album, for example, like we scheduled it, it took about a couple months, and every day we were scheduling time with, my songwriter friends and my band and my producers, and we were going in and punching in 9 to 5. And I actually like that, and after 5 I get to hang out with my family, and whereas before I feel like I was working every waking hour. But I'm like there's so many things that fill my cup that I'm like I could never choose. Like I will always do tattoos. I will always make music. I will always like things that people don't even know. Like I love gardening,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
but I'm like you. There's so many things I want to do that it hurts, physically hurts that I can't do all of them. Like I've been really
What do you want to do that you haven't done?
well. I just feel like there's a space for like a goth Martha Stewart, and I feel like I want to do that. Like there's just so much like home design and gardening and tools and things that I want to selfishly make for myself, and that's kind of where I always come at like when I create things or whether it's a product or music, like I'm just coming from the standpoint of a fan. Like what is it that I would love, like when I'm making this music, like yeah, I could use a pop format that would probably get me more, you know, listens, but I just feel like I just want to make stuff that like gives my like makes my heart skip a beat.
Well, I think one of the things that I loved so much about Love Made Me Do It is that it it really surprised me for one thing because I felt
Yeah.
like it was very understated in places. Like it was
Yeah.
very, it was like you're a. There's no two ways of saying it. You're a very famous person, and in lots of ways, you could have come out with some kind of, not that you were ever going to be Britney Spears, but you could have come out
Yeah.
with something that was very, pop music that was very
Yeah.
obvious, and the fact that it was very understated and sexy and dark, I
Yeah.
thought that was I thought that was amazing. And it felt like when I listened to that record and down to the artwork and everything, it feels like you're sort of creating a world, like your
Yeah.
world. And that sounds a little bit like that sounds a little bit like what you're saying you want to do
Oh
creatively.
man, you get me. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I feel like that was my first album, so I feel like this second album is definitely an evolution. Like I'm pushing myself vocally and like production wise, I feel like it's such a bigger sound that we're creating, but it's still in the same vein. Like I just I love synthwave. I love like the nostalgic sounds of the 80s, and so that's where I tend to thrive. But I feel like it's not I don't think people were expecting a pop album. If anything, I think they were expecting a metal album just because, I've
Mm.
been in like the metal scene for so long and I love metal. It's just not I don't know, it's not how I write lyrics. It's not how what my voice doesn't cater to that. I love to listen to that. I don't know, like women in metal, like I feel like there's few that I really like love the sound of their voice. Like I love Elisa from Arch Enemy, things like that, like people that sing that way. But I don't know, I feel like I leave metal to the guys.
Well, I mean, metal's a broad church, though, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know, like there's definitely industrial rumblings in what you do.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, for sure. I love industrial. Like, a lot of my roots are in that. But as far as like, like black metal or all the stuff that I love, like I just don't feel that um that's not where my heart sits as far as the music that I want to create. Like I love Depeche Mode. I love, The Cure. That's just,
Yeah.
that's where my heart's at.
Yeah, that version, by the way, I totally passed me
Oh,
by at the time, but that version of Love Song you do
oh
in
yeah.
Spanish is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny. I got a lot of shit for that one.
Why?
Well, I think it's from like the Cure purists, and I actually love them for it because I feel like they're very protective and there I think there's a lot of people that have done like covers of bands that you're just like I don't know like people people make I don't know get they give people a bad name I think but I just felt like I was doing a different spin on it. I feel like the Cure is not broken. We don't need to fix that. um
Yeah,
but
I should say for the haters that when I worked at the NME, I used to work at the NME, I curated a CD of Cure covers that was like a
okay.
cover mount,
Uh-huh.
and we had some good people on there, doing
Yeah.
covers. I wish I'd known you at that time, but Robert Smith was like a total cheerleader for it. He was
Yeah.
like he wanted to hear his songs reinterpreted.
Yeah, yeah. Like when I just released Vampire Love, and this kid just did like a country version of it, and I have no idea about country. Like I don't even listen to the classics. I don't know anything about it. But man, it was so cool and so heartfelt, and I loved it. So I love when people take something and spin it into even a different genre. I think that's cool. And that's what I was trying to do with that. I mean, we definitely made it a little bit more upbeat, and I wanted it to sound kind of like an arcade game and then obviously doing it in Spanish, I feel like that was, not a lot of people know that, I was born in Mexico. I'm
Yeah,
Latina.
yeah,
My family's from South America. And so that was kind of paying homage to my heritage, and like, and also like, I mean, The Cure has like the biggest Latin fans, you know? And so I was like, I don't know, I thought they would appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I find that mad, like it's like when you see, the Cure and the Smiths as well. It's like when you see there was a big thing for years. There was loads of features in the UK about Morrissey having these like a big fan base in Mexico.
Yeah, we,
It's
we
like,
still don't know why. We don't know why. Like
well,
we don't know the fascination with like the Mexican Morrissey fans. Like I'm in LA right now, and it's like it's just when you go, and I've seen Morrissey play like at the Palladium here in LA, and it's just an ocean of my Mexican homies.
there's got to be some. There's got to be something in there because
I
it's
don't
Mexico,
understand it.
Mexico. Central America, South America. It feels like there's.
There's theories, but I'm like, he doesn't sing in Spanish. I don't understand.
Yeah, no. Well, I do think melancholy and sadness is quite a universal language.
Sure, yeah, but like it's funny because I one time Googled that. I put like, why do Mexicans love? And then you know how Google like has like your recommendations, and it was like love the Dodgers, Morrissey, and then I forgot what else it was, but it was so funny.
Is,
It's like everybody's wondering.
is, is that your phone? Do you need to get your phone?
Yeah, sorry. Hold on. I I live in Indiana now. We moved into the middle of nowhere. We bought a bunch of land in the sticks. And so when I come to LA, I stay at Charo's house. So we're at Charo's house right now. And so she gets phone calls like all throughout the day from Spain, from everywhere. So
Right,
sorry
right,
about
right.
that.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry
Yeah,
about it. I can I ask you something? I want to ask you something, and it's in like a really friendly way, and
sure.
I'm worried that you might think I'm taking the piss, and I'm really not.
It's okay.
How? Well, I'm really interested in religion,
Yeah.
and I mean, you've had a big religious. I don't even say it really.
Yeah.
You found God. Is that fair to
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. Yeah. I always say like I made my way back. Yeah.
Can I ask?
I was brought up quite religious. My parents were very strict, and I think as a child, you I'm just going to speak for myself. I wasn't developed. My mind wasn't developed enough to philosophize the ideas of religion, and I think your parents just do the best that they can, whatever religion that might be, and guiding it to whatever they feel will be a good outcome for you. And so I obviously strayed away, and I discovered punk rock music, and I think I've always been attracted to the idea of being a free thinker and thinking for myself, and not like fuck the government, fuck authority, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let me figure it out on my own. And so, I've had a few revelations in the last 4 or 5 years, and that have just led me back to where I came from, but on my own terms, like with an actual understanding versus, doing it out of fear. Like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go to hell if I don't do this. And so I think to me, that's the only, like, not the only, but that is like a more sincere way of approaching it. And, I've done things in my life that I'm not necessarily proud of, and things that I have made amends for over the years, and things that I'm still working on. And so, this was my answer to that. And so I ended up getting baptized this last year, and um, and I just thought that I wanted to share that with my followers. It wasn't in any way like, hey, I want you guys to do what I do, because I've
Yeah.
never been
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
I'm always like, I don't talk about like who I voted for. Like, you guys can figure out what's good for you. Like, I hate when people do that, where it's like, oh, you don't think your fans can think for themselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Totally.
in this case, I was just like, I want to share this part because I was getting asked questions, like I joined my church choir, and so I would post things like that on my Instagram, and people were like, what's going on? Like, is she
Yeah.
making fun of this,
Yeah.
And I don't intend on being you know uh a mouthpiece for that in any way. Like, I feel like the best way that I can be a witness to people is if they ask, or just by leading by example. I always think that's the best. I don't, I've never liked overbearing people in general, and I think that I don't think that's like the teachings of Christ anyway, but and that's my own personal opinion. I'm sure lots of Christians will disagree with that, but so
No,
but
no,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think that. I mean, in so many ways, I used to see the church and organized religion as, as everything that well, a big part of what I rebelled against as someone who was into punk and counterculture and free
Same.
thinking and so on. But I actually feel like we've sort of arrived at a bit of a point in society and culture where actually acknowledging the spiritual and the need for the spiritual and the need for community and the need for
Yeah.
love and etc. is actually kind of a revolutionary act. I actually think that kind of I actually think that I actually think that exploring our spirituality isn't what it was at one point. I actually think
Yeah.
it's almost like it's almost punk rock in its own
Yeah,
way.
it is. Yeah. And I'm finding like there's just so many people like me, like in my DMs I get so many messages that are people who look like me and that are seeking something that's outside of what has worked for us in the past. And it's like I just I'm attracted to the historical aspect of that. I'm attracted to the philosophical aspect of it, and just it's just it's been a good journey for me in that sense.
No,
But
I'm pleased
and
to
I've
hear it.
always, if you look at like my past two, like I'm sober now for it'll be 17 years in July, and I just want to get better. I just want to um I never want to stop getting better, or like fixing myself, because I have so many downfalls.
Oh,
We all do.
listen, one of the first things I say is that people who can admit that they're human and they have failings
Yeah,
are so much further along the path to where
yeah,
they should be than the people who just can't acknowledge it.
yeah, yeah,
It's like to actually have that kind of ability to analyze yourself.
yeah.
I think that's an amazing skill.
Yeah,
Has
and I think some people are expecting me to change like so radically, like oh, like the aesthetics. I think like that's the part where I don't feel like I belong in a Christian community outside of my tiny little church in the middle of nowhere. Like I really love that little family, but as far as like this Instagram Christian, like I don't want to have nothing to do. Like people are just so judgmental, and so they turn people off. And I don't think that's the majority of Christians. I just think that's the loudest ones. And you see it in every movement. Like the vegans are the same. Like I
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like they're just like so they can be very hateful and push people away. Um, but at the core of the cause, that's not what it's about. So
Do you
so
think
yeah.
it's made its way into the music?
On the second album, yeah, I think it's always been there. I've always had a fascination with like sacrifice um and faith. I mean, I think that's why my favorite album, like from Depeche Mode, is Songs of Faith and Devotion. I feel like there's so many, and not that they're a Christian band, but like there's so many elements of battling with these ideas of and it's not really religion. I think it's more faith. Because
Yeah.
I'm with I'm not into. I think there's a lot of bad representations of organized religion and a lot of bad representations of actual people in the church that I want nothing to do with. But at the core of the teachings, that's not where it's at.
No, totally. No, I'm really pleased for you. And like I say,
Oh, right.
I was conscious of bringing it up because I feel like sometimes in music spaces, for example, and sort of alternative music spaces, the initial reaction would be one of when
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
I
yeah.
just
And I'm not
I,
making worship music. That's not in my that. It's like Alice Cooper. He's like, I'm Christian who makes rock music.
yeah,
I don't
totally. But
I don't
also
make rock
I,
music.
I always try to steer interview subjects towards religion anyway because I'm just so fascinated by it. So
Yeah, same.
thanks for talking to me about that.
Yeah, yeah.
I really respect it.
Oh, thanks.
You were saying a little bit about the difference between this record and the new record, and obviously I haven't heard it, so I'm going all on Vampire Love
Yeah,
here. But
yeah.
yeah, what do you think? What do you think is different? You were saying it was almost punchier.
Yeah, I think the new album is definitely darker. I've like vocally I've definitely pushed myself more. I think the first album, well, also too, you have to understand the first album I wrote 10 years prior to releasing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'd written it about a romantic experience that I had, about one person, and I don't feel that way obviously anymore about that person. I'm like, you know, um,
Yeah.
happily married, and I don't really think about him anymore. But I love being able to dip into those experiences and make something that's relatable in that sense. But this album is, I think, a little more angrier.
What
But
you
I'm
what are you angry at?
not. I think. Well, yeah, I'm angry about a lot of things. I think. I don't know how. I think you guys are a bit of a reflection of how the last years went down over here. Was there was just a lot of divide between people on a lot of subjects, and I feel like I lost a lot of friends and loved ones over those divides, and so yeah, there's a little bit of that. There's a lot of, there's not to say that my husband and I fight a lot of times, but I think that there's subjects within the romantic realm that are worth fighting for, and they come out as angry, So
I
a lot
mean,
of
we
that.
just it's so even with this podcast, I always try to speak to people who are all over the map politically, who are um, in everything comes through like a music prism, but just
Yeah,
that I've always sort of I try to view my kind of view of the world as very humanist, as in that people interest me, but
yeah,
also kind of like heterodox in a way. So it's like, I'm a liberal, but there's some small c conservative ideas that I think are
yeah,
useful, and actually, from the outside looking in, you say you maybe kind of lost some friends. I mean, I would argue that the people who can't see you
yeah,
beyond a belief aren't actually friends. It's
yeah,
like
for sure. And
it's
and
hard.
I think people,
It's hard
things
to
run its
realize
course.
that, but
Yeah, yeah, and I think, I mean, to me, ultimately, like as far as politics go, I just want to be left alone.
yeah,
Like just
yeah,
leave
yeah,
me
yeah,
alone.
yeah,
That's all. I
yeah.
don't tell me what to do.
Are you outing yourself as a libertarian there?
I don't know. I just don't like labels. So I mean,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like, I don't know. My husband's an ex-gang member, and I'm like, we've had our fill of having to be part of a neighborhood.
yeah, yeah. Totally,
I
totally.
think to me it's more like the idea, like, we left LA. We bought a bunch of land in the middle of nowhere that, where we tested the soil. We're gonna grow our own food. We got our own water supply. Like whatever it takes to be the least amount of attached to the government, the better for us. Like that's very exciting to us. I know it sounds weird, like I feel like we've somehow become some goth hippies or something.
Well,
We're just
I think that's one of the biggest problems I have with quote unquote my people,
mhm.
on the left, is that when did it become so cool to shill for every position the government had? You know,
Yeah, yeah,
like that's wild to me. It's like,
yeah, same.
surely the whole point of the reason we got into this was because we were curious and we questioned things, and that's not to say that we should, kind of buy a one-way ticket to Crankville, but
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
just going, oh yeah, I will be subservient. That's
Yeah,
not punk. That's not punk rock. That's not liberal.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But I think there's like a big shift happening. I mean, like I said, I may have lost some friends, but I've gained a lot of more people that are on the same page, and I think some of that too has to do with growing up. I feel like I tend to vote now. Uh, and this is no diss to anybody and their choices, but like less emotional and more logical,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
and that's been hard for me because I've always been somebody that was like led by my heart. So, like, and now I think like, oh, well, long term, let's consider these things, and it's like, but, and that happens when you have a kid, like,
yeah. Because you're voting for someone else's future.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But it's like I feel like I think there's something for everybody. I love coming to LA and visiting my friends. I think the food here is the best, hands down. Where I'm at, there's the food is garbage, but so there's pros and cons to places. Like here, I'm like, man, I'm so tired of being bombarded by constant billboards. Like, I don't like want to know about people, like certain people, like why do I have to know about these people? And then you go to Indiana where I'm at, and there's no billboards, there's no like delivery services, there's nothing, but there's also no sidewalks. So it's like,
Yeah,
you can't have
yeah,
can't have
yeah.
it all.
Yeah, no, I think we live in extraordinary times, but I think we live in exciting times in some ways
Yeah,
because
same.
I feel like there's so many things that are changing, and with that becomes possibility to almost create our own spaces and our own things, and
Yeah.
I think that's really exciting.
And
And
I like to bring it back to the music. Sorry to disrupt
no,
you,
it's
but
fine. I was just very conscious that I kept you just about as long as I said I would. So,
okay, I do talk a lot. I'll leave you soon. But
mm.
what I will say about music, and I think that this is like my music in particular has been a reflection of what we are just talking about, is that like I love electronic music. I love mindless electronic music too, you know. But I for me it's marrying the two worlds of the LA and Indiana, right? Where it's like where you have the electronic elements and that you couldn't do this kind of music without technologies, but there's still the human fingerprint to it. So you know, we didn't auto tune, we didn't like I wrote these lyrics. They came from there's a lot of imperfections, and even in the sound design of the analog sounds uh that we created and designed, it's like they're not perfect, and I think that's what gives like the soul to the robot, you know? And I think that's the genre of music that I want to make, you know?
Yeah, I listened to a really old interview with Bjork the other day, and she was saying similar, and it was, I mean,
I
she was
love
saying,
Björk.
yeah, I mean, she's the queen, isn't she?
Yeah.
I'm not totally. There's not loads of Bjork records that I love, but I think she's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
And she was saying this thing about people saying electronic music, they have no soul, but that's just like blaming your tools, and that's so true. It's
Yeah.
like people who make boring, whatever guitar music is, quote unquote guitar music. It's not the guitar's fault. It's what you're doing with it. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's any different with electronic music, really.
Yeah.
Have you before I go? Have you heard the? Do you like OMD?
Yeah.
Have you heard the
They
new
just played.
record?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's amazing. It just made me think of what you were saying. I think it's
Oh, cool.
obviously it's an electronic record. It's called
Yeah, yeah.
Bauhaus
Yeah, yeah.
Staircase.
I love
Uh,
post-punk.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, it's they're electronic pioneers, but they're uh, just the songwriting is amazing. It's just so human and warm, and there's
I
sort of
love that.
mistakes on it, but they kind of make something good out of
Yeah.
them. It's really good. It's really good.
Those are my favorites always. There's a Travis song that like I love Travis. That's like one of my favorite bands, but not electronic obviously, but
Yeah.
where he like starts too soon on a song and then I think it's on Blue Flashing Lights. I think that's the song. But he's like and then like he fucked up and they just kept it in there and then he comes in right and I had something about that little breath that I'm just like I wait for it, you know.
Oh
I love
yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah.
that.
All my favourite sort of punk rock as well. You can hear like
Yeah.
the slide on the fretboards and stuff. I
Yeah, and
just
then there's I love like overly polished song. Like I love Hall and Oates, like you know.
yeah. I
I
don't
love
think Hall and Oates love Hall and Oates at the moment. They've just split up.
oh yeah,
Haven't they?
that's right. They're going through it, aren't they?
Every time people talk about global politics and people getting on, I'm like, well, look, Hall and Oates can't even get on. So
I
what hope do any
know,
of
I
us have?
know. Yeah.
Kat Von D, I think you're amazing. Thank you so much for
Oh,
speaking to me.
this has been my favorite interview this month. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I love that. You can come again.
All right.
When's the record out, and when are
Yeah,
you going to come to the UK and I can hear the songs live?
yeah. We're gonna release a few more singles before the album, starting in January. So January, February, we'll have two more singles, and then the final singles in March with the rest of the album. And the
Amazing,
album's gonna be called My Side of the Mountain. And yeah,
amazing,
it's like,
amazing.
all right, cool.
Are you going to come to the UK and play some songs?
Yeah, yeah. We plan on touring in the summer. I'm not sure. I don't think they've laid out anything for the UK, but I know that's our first stop after US.
Well, I will definitely be there.
I hope so. All
Have a lovely Christmas, and maybe I'll speak to you again sometime.
right,
See you,
bye.
Kat. Bye.